wanted to start with the biggest story, at least here in America. Well, even then, I'm not even sure. But this one has been it's been a big doozy because it really is leaving a lot of people scratching their head. And that's the LIV PGA agree to merge. So they're coming to an agreement where they're going to now have one golf set up again. And, it's kind of funny because LIV became a organization. Sorry, my dog is drinking his water right now. Anyway, PGA or LIV became an organization because PGA was not paying the wages that some of the players wanted to. And to be honest, they had a really legitimate argument here is that they, like Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, like a lot of those guys were able to kind of just like pick and choose when they show up. And, they got paid the big bucks. But guys like Brooks Koepka, who are up-and-comers but really haven't proven anything just quite yet, or, Jordan Spieth, who had a moment or two here and there, and then he kind of was starting to tail off a little bit. He still wasn't being, front and center and getting all the money that they probably deserved and should have gotten. And it's funny because Phil Mickelson has been saying this for years. He's been a big advocate that, like, listen, the PGA needs to pay more. Mm-hmm. It's taxing on our bodies just going out there and golf. And listen, you and I, we've golfed before. Mm-hmm. We golfed an 18-hole tournament for the very first time. And the day after, we were like, I'm a little sore, man. Like, right. And these guys sometimes are doing this like every weekend at some points, mm-hmm. like, and maybe they get a weekend off and then they go back and they travel a lot for these tournaments. So, LIV said, hey, we're going to give you money and you're welcome to join us. And, people flipped out because they're like, well, it's big oil. It's the Saudis. They are, it's blood money and blah, blah, blah. And listen, I understand all that. I do. And I'm not saying you're dumb for thinking that. I think it's a legitimate cause. But if you're going to do that about golf, mm-hmm. about people that are playing golf who are getting paid for it, we also need to look at, like, you look at iPhone. They're made in China, and honestly, the working conditions and the wages aren't great. Okay, right. You look at God. I mean, you can pinpoint literally anything. Mm-hmm. Samsung, I'm sure, is got something. I'm just looking at my fridge, and that's what it reminded me of. But I mean, for real, like you look at anything. Even PGA back in the day was in bed with big oil industries, like, mm-hmm. so it's nothing new. And like, if you do that throughout your whole life where you're like, I'm not going to go to this company because they are against, human rights or whatever, then great. You are the preacher and the practicing person of that. Like, great. That's always good. Mm-hmm. But listen, I'm a realist, at least for me. I like certain things. I like to live a certain way. I'm not afraid to say that. There are things that I'm sure that I've bought or I have or use, especially my iPhone, that don't have the greatest working conditions. And listen, I feel for those people. I do. This might sound bad, but like, there's not much I can do. If I just stop going there, it's going to take more than just me. You know what I mean? So it's just a bigger conversation that we're talking about. And listen, we're just talking about golf. That's mm-hmm. why when this first happened, Cody, we were on here. We talked about it. And I said, I don't blame people for wanting more money. It's not that big of a deal for me. Right. I understand that there's this, there's an issue going on and that, the human rights and all that. Like, I understand that. But listen, it's kind of hard to say no when they're throwing not just like $10 million at you. They're throwing like hundreds of millions of dollars at these golfers. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say no to that. Like, I don't blame guys for being like, nah, I'm probably going to do that. Yeah. I don't blame them. So I think it's just people are looking at like well, I can't believe this, but at the same time, it's like you got to make money somehow. And if you can make enough money for generations of your family to be set in stone, I mean, that's kind of the dream. That's why people come to America, because there are those opportunities.
Yeah.
And these golfers found that opportunity.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes this a little bit more polarizing is that the PGA was against LIV for a while when LIV was first formed. Then they signed a couple of, I'd say, up and coming, somewhat big name PGA players. And I remember the PGA Tour itself had a big stance on if you are affiliated with LIV, you're not to be invited or compete in any of the PGA tours, which is why LIV then created their own tours. And I think what the problem is it's not that the players are going to get paid more or there's more money being funded into the sport, which is what's been needed. PGA, from what some experts would say, is it would cost some of the up and coming players more money than they would make on the tour because of flights and travel and having to get your own equipment or all that stuff before your sponsors would help take care of it. So players like Rory McIlroy or, Tiger Woods, they would make so much money off the PGA because they're made, so to speak. But the other players that you made or that you named earlier, they're not in that realm, so they wouldn't get the same cut that PGA would. And there's no like universal healthcare with PGA or any of the other maybe basic benefits that, like, let's say a league like the NFL or the NBA would have. So they're just completely different. But I think what the problem is again, it's not that the player's getting more money. I think the question is, where's the money coming from? Which, again, LIV is created by the Saudi Arabia government, which is already a sticky situation. And you're 100% right. There's other things that we use in our day-to-day. I'm currently using a MacBook and an iPhone to do this, which I know we're made in a certain,
we
country.
Can't be friends anymore.
Yeah, which we're made in a certain country that doesn't have great labor laws. But, again, we consciously make those purchasing decisions. But I think what makes it tough is this is directly from that government that has done really terrible things in human history, and that can't be forgotten. But I would also say, too, that America is just as guilty as that in other countries as well. It's just not, obviously, it's not promoted here on our land, because why would we say that? But then also, too, the PGA Tour was so on their soapbox about why they didn't want to have LIV in their sport and, this, that, and the other. And then just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they come to some agreement, a merge, without notifying any of the representing players. And so, like, you had players like Rory McIlroy that had to answer for that. And he's like, look, I turned down a lot of opportunity from LIV to stay with PGA because I believed in PGA. And then it feels like PGA just sold me down the river just because they were going to make some money. Now, who knows who controls what? I don't know if LIV is just going to fund it and PGA is going to operate it, or it's going to be a split decision. If it's PGA basically just giving the rights to certain like names of events and LIV is just going to 100% fund it and produce it. I don't know what that entails. We'll probably know more later on, but good for the players for getting more money because they deserve it. I mean, this is a taxing sport, and if you're one of the best in the world to compete, you should be getting at least some sort of base number to be on the tour. But I think it would be hard to ignore what feelings this would do to some people that have been affected by the Saudi Arabia government in some form or fashion, positive or negative. And I think that's what the bigger question is. And, it kind of turns into one of those things of like, this is kind of bigger than sports. It's just so happened that this is being covered in a sports category, but it's kind of further out than that. And it's a lot more complex than what just on the surface of it is. So it's interesting to see. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like. I remember, not to get too much off topic, but I remember when the WWE was up for sale and the Saudi Arabia government was in talks to purchase it. I'll be honest, the fact that they would have bought it directly, I don't know if I would have watched it anymore, just because I can understand if they're like an investor or whatnot, but I don't know about a direct purchase with all that they do and all that they believe between their citizens and women's rights and human rights and stuff like that. So it'd be hard for me to continue to be a consumer knowing that. So we'll see. PGA is going to have a lot of blowback from this, I'm sure, more than just us. But, I think that's what happens when you do business with certain people that have a reputation, and you now have to clean up that reputation, ironically. So,
yeah, they're going to owe a lot of these PGA golfers some money. Because the way they went about this, they're like, oh, we're we believe in something higher and blah, blah, blah. And, this is despicable that some of these players are going over there, and then all of a sudden they merge. And it's like, listen, I understand that they were in a situation where a lot of their sponsors were dropping out, so they needed that money. I get it. But at the same time, to go exactly, I mean, it's to quote the Bible here, it's like a dog going back to its vomit. I mean, that's it was just, it didn't make sense why PGA went that way. And so it's obvious that they had been thinking about doing this for a while. And I think they just realized that, hey, listen, let's just do it now. And then the golf will continue and everyone's going to start forgetting about it, which I'm sure it will. But, they're going to owe some guys some money because that's a little messed up. There were some golfers who were truly believing in what the PGA was selling, and unfortunately, they were on the wrong side of it. So
yeah, unfortunate. All right, what's the next topic you want to talk about?
Well, let's go